Hello, my name is Keith King. I am a Freemason. I have been a Freemason for around 25 years, and I will continue to be a Freemason for the foreseeable future. If you are wondering what happened to my right arm and right shoulder, they had a fight with cancer, one that lasted 2 rounds or 2 years. Cancer won those 2 rounds, and I had to lose my right arm and shoulder. I did, however, win the next 11 rounds. I hope the referee doesn't stop the fight too early, so I can continue doing what I like doing. And now to the topic: the Freemasons finally disclose their ultimate agenda. The trouble is, nobody saw this disclosure. That is, until William Tompkins let the cat out of the bag during his interview with Walter Noasad on Walter's YouTube channel, Search for Truth Reality. The interview talked about William Tompkins' role within the Apollo 11 moon mission and the involvement of the Freemasons. At this stage, I would like to point out that William Tompkins was not a Freemason. In giving this talk, I would like to thank Walter Noasad from Search for Truth Reality for allowing me to use the original footage from his interview with Dr. Robert Wood and William Tompkins, episode 2 and 3, and also the case for the space program.
Good afternoon and welcome to Search for Truth Reality. My name is Walter Noasad. Today I have a very special video for you I'd like to introduce. If you look over my shoulder here, you'll see William Tompkins.
Walter, who produces the YouTube channel Search for Truth Reality, in his interview allows William Tompkins to elaborate on his involvement with the Apollo 11 space mission to the moon. William, in turn, explains that he was working for TRW and that TRW had access to the video footage of the whole of the moon mission. TRW stands for Thompson, Ramo and Woolrich, ex-employers of Douglas Engineering, who left and started their own automotive company in 1958. It was during the landing of the Apollo 11 on the surface of the moon, on the 20th of July 1969, that the situation on the moon becomes really interesting. William states that before Neil Armstrong makes the statement, "One small step for man and a giant leap for mankind," Neil Armstrong, or Buzz Aldrin, takes a Masonic plaque from the space vehicle and performs a Masonic ceremony of laying the plaque on the moon's surface. As every Mason knows, normally this plaque would be placed on the cornerstone of the Masonic building. Here is an image of the Freemason George Washington as he performs the elaborate ceremony of laying the cornerstone of the United States Capitol building in 1793, along with the Grand Master of Maryland, Joseph Clark. This is the most important of Masonic ceremonies. So this ceremony of laying the plaque is very important to the Masonic fraternity. And then Neil, or Buzz, is handed a Freemason's flag, which he inserts into the moon's surface. And then Neil Armstrong continues the ceremony of claiming the moon for the Freemasons organization. After fulfilling his obligation of claiming the moon on behalf of the Freemasons, Neil then makes the statement, one small step for man and a giant leap for mankind. Here is William Tompkins telling Walter his version of the events.
They don't have a problem with the landing, which they had anticipated they would have. They climb down. First thing they do is take the Freemason plaque and they put it over next to the structure so you can see both of them, and they photograph that as the Freemasons then accepting the ownership of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know whether we understood that part.
No, I got it, but
Okay.
Go ahead.
So then, all this before you do your real thing. They dig down in the box where all the stuff is, and they bring out the Freemason flag. And they stick it in here like this, and they stand next to the Freemason flag. Okay? First things first here.
So you've seen these photos?
Yeah. And I'm only saying, what have the Freemasons got to do with this?
well, we've seen the photos of what was it, Buzz Aldrin with his ring and his bib, on the limb, So this is not.
It's not totally new.
Yeah. So we've heard this before, but you're seeing this being done. Is that what you're saying? That you saw them through the video feed, them conducting this little ceremony on the.
Yeah.
On before one small step for man, it's one planting of a flag for the Freemasons, and then we'll do the one small step. What came first? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, you got to ask, what are Freemasons? What are they doing here?
William then goes on to say that everybody on the Apollo 11 spaceflight to the moon was a Freemason, but no one else knew that the astronauts were all Freemasons.
Every one of the astronauts were Freemasons.
This is the first time in 47 years that anyone in the public domain has ever heard this particular story regarding the Freemasons and the moon landing. So how do I feel about it, and why have I approached Walter for his use of his interview? Before I answer that question, I would like to play another sequence in the interview, one where William Tompkins explains that the astronauts were told to fly over the dark side of the moon. As they flew over this area, they were told to check out for certain buildings in this vicinity and to take aerial shots of these buildings. William explains that NASA had known about these buildings via 12 previous unmanned missions that had already travelled and surveyed around the moon, and that there were 3 different sites that housed these ancient buildings. And by doing these surveying missions, NASA could see the best place to have the moon landing.
We had launched some 12, 14 surveying missions where we sent up satellites that flew around the moon so we could be looking at where we were going to land, make the selection of where we wanted to land, and we had seen facilities, ancient facilities on the moon. We already knew this. That same series of photographs that they had, that NASA had, showed 3 different areas on the other side of the moon which had ancient structures.
William goes on to say that the people at TRW saw photographs of these ancient buildings, some of which floated just above the moon's surface. Walter then asked Bill if he personally saw any of these buildings, to which Bill replies yes, and starts to tell Walter that one of the buildings appeared to be made of glass, as it appeared to be translucent.
But did you personally yourself lay eyeballs on a building a mile and a half above or on the surface of the moon?
One of the ones that I saw was a glass building that was floating like a mile above the surface.
You saw that one?
Yeah.
Was it lit up? Was it broken? Was it?
It looked like a translucent building.
It was enormous and seemed to be about 200 stories in height.
Yeah, 200-story building, floating, big rectangular building floating.
It's at this stage we should learn how William Tompkins came to be in a position of authority in TRW's side of the space program. And for this, Walter asked Bill who were the Nordic extraterrestrial people.
The question was, and you told me about this last time we visited, because you pointed this out that you forgot to include this in the book, and it was a question that I had, and I'm sure a lot of the readers out there had about the book, is how did you learn that your secretaries were indeed Nordic extraterrestrials?
Bill replies that he was given 3 secretaries and that he learnt that all 3 were Nordics.
On one flight, about 6 weeks after I finally got my real secretary, and she reported for work, again, flying in another DC-7 to Cape Canaveral with my assistant this time, assistant section chief. He told me, he said, Bill, we could be in trouble. This is on the aircraft. And I said, what? We're in trouble all the time. No, he said, is it wise for us to leave her there because she could sell the whole company to our competition, Lockheed or Boeing? I mean, that woman is unbelievable. You can't leave her alone. She can do anything.
He was worried you'd left the secretaries behind.
Yeah. And so this goes on, and at that time, neither one of us believes that she's a Nordic. We don't believe that good-looking one over in propulsion is a Nordic. And even the guy that comes every once in a while, their advisor,
Right.
They're not Nordics. We don't believe that. Actually, it was over a year before we really accepted, because of conditions that came up, holy cats, they really are Nordics. Wow. And everything after that completely changed.
Bill then learnt that their task was to see that the moon mission was accomplished. Bill goes on to say that one of his secretaries would telepathically put the answers to major problems into Bill's head. This ensured that Bill was taken seriously by everyone at NASA.
She has a captain who is her boss. There's a contract to Douglas for she, the other girl, and the other guy to report to the admiral on everything that goes on, the Nordic Navy admiral. And that mission was a mission to us to see that we accomplished the Apollo missions, all 4 of the Apollo missions. That's when she simply opened up and started telepathically putting stuff in my head like so fast I couldn't even keep up with it. Answering the problems, coming up with major problems, answers to them. Now, she didn't answer all the problems, but I would say she answered over 50% of all of the major problems of Apollo. The other stuff I sort of came up with sideways about the answer to the others.
Bill then says that the Nordic extraterrestrials were contracted to see that all of the Apollo space missions were completed, and that with the aid of his Nordic secretary Jessica, who would put answers into his head, he became a leading advisor to the space program.
And the other girl was she was my section chief's typist, okay? So here we have two beautiful Nordic girls and this good-looking Nordic guy that helps them. He's not there all the time, who are contracted to make sure that we do all of the Apollo. Wow. Hey, this is cool. Now, you have to look at my secretary. Yes, she does look like somebody else, okay? But she has a sense of humor that you absolutely cannot, you can't ignore. Now, she's brilliant. Now, when I'm in a meeting on the Apollo, in a conference room with 15 or 16 other of the top people, and we're fighting this problem for, say, 3, maybe 4 hours, and you can't lick this one. She puts it in my head and she says, Billy, why don't you just say, use so-and-so? And that was the answer that we needed on the Apollo program to handle this. She puts that stuff in my head, and now it's my idea. I get credit for it, okay? I'm going up like this. And she does this every single day. She comes up with something again that's absolutely needed, and it's never wrong. It's always the right answer. And I had this girl for 4 years on the Apollo program, okay? She's brilliant. You can't believe what she knows, but she's a Nordic. She's here from the Nordic Navy. She's a full commander in the Nordic Navy. Oh my God. And she's not 17. She's a whole lot older than that. Okay, but she still looks 17. You can't believe what that 4 years was.
William then goes on to say that while Neil Armstrong was standing on the moon, the camera was surveying the surrounding area, and that the camera picked up 7 large spacecraft hovering just above the surface of the crater that Neil Armstrong was standing in. William describes what these 7 large spaceships looked like in the documentary The Case for the Space Program. William goes on to say that standing underneath one of these spacecraft was reptilians with their legs apart.
This part about, obviously, it was determined that when Neil Armstrong said, "Good God, sir, they are enormous," referring to these massive extraterrestrial craft, okay? They weren't crafts, they were ships. They were not crafts, they were ships. And so for them to be parked around the edge of the crater, above the surface, floating, okay, and then many of the reptilians standing with their legs apart, standing
all right.
on the ground.
They're on the surface. The reptilians are on the surface of the moon. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, they're standing underneath the ships.
And you saw this.
Yeah, and
were they scaly? Did they have suits on? Or they?
Then the word came back.
If all of this is true, than the stories told within Masonic legends about the origins of mankind's association with these original antediluvian buildings is nothing short of sensational. Later in this video, you will hear an American president telling the whole world that we have aliens here on Earth, with William making these statements about the Freemasons and the moon mission, and it has now become public knowledge. I have listened to various Grand Masters explain that Freemasonry is not a secret society, but a society with secrets. Now that secret is out, this is where I put together the Masonic pieces of the story. It is now time to take the blindfold off and to open our eyes as to the Freemasons' secret agenda. But really, for the last 70 years, it has not been a secret. The Masons have been trying to return to the stars since the time of the Great Flood that involved Noah. During my years as a Freemason, I have personally explained to candidates in Freemasonry that the antediluvians, before the Great Flood, instructed Noah how to build a craft that would survive the coming tsunami. The antediluvians then told Noah that they had inscribed their ancient knowledge on 2 pillars, one made of stone and one made of brass. They also told Noah where to find these 2 pillars. These 2 pillars are so important to every ancient culture that they can be seen everywhere, such as in the hand of the Buddha. There are 2 reptilian serpents situated on the shoulders of the Buddha. They are known to be the symbol that represents the ancient Magi. The 2 serpents are usually shown around the winged globe that is displayed upon the obelisk. The 2 serpents are placed in the hands of Mercury, the communicator between the gods and mankind. The Irish St. Patrick places his staff or rod upon the 2 serpents in this Masonic church. And here are 2 serpents entwined around the rod in between 2 angels, one of which holds the horns of the bull at the top of the Louvre Museum in France. I have travelled to various places around the world and found these stone pillars, such as Cleopatra's Needle along the embankment in London. Upon these stone pillars are various symbols, such as these images of 3 falcon birds. They represent Horus, the Egyptian god. There are other symbols and hieroglyphs upon the stone pillar. The Freemasons are taught in their lodges that their knowledge is veiled behind these symbols, and also hidden within the allegory or words portrayed in the hieroglyphs displayed on these pillars. These pillars or obelisks can be seen along the Champs-Élysées in Paris, where a golden pyramid points the way to the heavens. The obelisks were situated in certain locations, usually to mark one of the Earth's energy lines. The obelisk in Paris points the way to the Arc de Triomphe, which was specifically designed as a gateway to the gods and placed on the Earth's energy grid or ley line. To thank God for giving us this knowledge of the Earth's energy grid, underneath the Golden Pyramid in Paris, the Egyptians carved into the stone an image of mankind kneeling down and giving reverence to his God. And then there is the obelisk placed within the Vatican at Rome. All of the symbols and hieroglyphs have been erased from this obelisk. Instead, you can see them on the exterior and inside of the building. It's as if the Vatican now possess their own set of symbols. But this obelisk still fulfills its allotted task. On the 22nd of June, which is the summer solstice or the longest day of the year in Europe, the sun touches the top of the obelisk at exactly 9 a.m., 9 being the Catholic Church's sacred number. And then the sun lines up to come down to touch the top of the Pope's chair. The Pope never sits in the chair at this time, or on this day of the year, as it would totally give the game away and let the world know that it was the centre of Europe's pagan sites. But the obelisk is much more than just a marker for the summer solstice. After filming this event, I have since learnt that the Vatican in Rome is exactly 555.5 minutes of arc from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, London, where time officially starts. I discovered this from reading Bruce Cathy's book entitled The Bridge to Infinity. Bruce Cathy was one of the first people to discover the location of the Earth's energy grid lines. The number 555.5 is the most important number known to the Masons. It can be found in their lodges upon their third degree tracing board. It is incorporated into the Washington obelisk that is placed outside the White House. The obelisk is 555 feet and 5 inches in height. In the Mayan calendar, there are 5 epochs of time. Each epoch is 5,125 years in duration. The number 125 is just 5 times 5 times 5. So each epoch in time is really 555.5. What relevance does this number hold for mankind? If we multiply 5,125, the number for each epoch, by the 5 epochs in total that make up the whole calendar, we arrive at the number 25,625. This is the number of years it takes for the Earth to circumnavigate around every star in the solar system as it journeys through the procession of the equinoxes to arrive at its original starting position after visiting every zodiac sign. This knowledge of the Earth's journey through each zodiac sign is so powerful that the Freemasons make sure you see it in every one of their churches, such as above the door of this church, where Jesus is shown within the Vesica Pisces, holding the orb, the symbol for Venus, with the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. They are displayed around him. These are the lion for Leo, the man for Aquarius, the ox for Taurus the bull, and the eagle for Scorpio. They are 90 degrees apart on the zodiac and form the 4th part of a circle. I could talk for ages on the number 555, but maybe Moses tells it best when he gives us the 10 Commandments. These commandments he acquired from the Egyptian Book of the Dead in chapter 125, or 5 times 5 times 5. But the Freemasons want to keep you totally up to date. So they have placed the number 555 at the start of the film The Matrix. Back to the story and the wisdom known by the antediluvians before the flood. After Noah discovered these pillars, he lived according to the Bible 350 years after the flood. And this is where the original stories behind the degrees of Freemasonry come in. Before the formation of the Grand Lodge of England in 1717, the operative Masons had only 2 degrees. These 2 degrees were called the degrees of Nimrod. So who was Nimrod, and why was he so important to the Freemasons? Nimrod was Noah's great-grandson, who was born long before Noah died. I believe that Nimrod visited Noah and inquired of Noah what life was like before the great flood. I have reason to believe that Noah told Nimrod that there were extraterrestrials coming and going to and from the earth. I also have reason to believe that Noah not only showed Nimrod how these extraterrestrials travelled to Earth in vehicles, but also how to build a space station that would assist Nimrod in his quest to replicate the space station used by our visitors. Their original space station would have been situated within the Garden of Eden, where mankind worked blissfully. This Garden of Eden is the same one that they threw Adam and Eve out of for breaking the rules, and then placed a flaming sword to keep them from returning back into the garden. Was this flaming sword a laser beam? Bill tells us that the reptilians had a high energy equipment like laser beams.
But I got the impression that on some of these, the Nazis mounted ordinary machine guns and weapons. But on others of them, apparently they may have considered using laser weapons.
They did use the laser weapons on them, the bigger ones.
Okay. Were the laser weapons invented by the Germans or by the reptilians?
Reptilians.
Okay. See, that would be new information.
Yeah.
Nimrod was the original Grand Master of the Masons. He sent out an invitation to all of the Masons in the Middle East to help him build a tower, one that was to reach to heaven and allow mankind to return to the stars. All of this is relayed in the original 2 Masonic degrees, called the degrees of Nimrod. These 2 degrees of Nimrod had 7 smaller degrees associated with them. These 2 degrees and their 7 smaller degrees told the whole history of Freemasonry. Every Freemason's apron has 2 rosettes with 7 baubles upon it. This is to represent the 2 degrees of Nimrod. According to the Bible, numerous extraterrestrials came down and stopped Nimrod from completing his tower that was to reach to heaven. Besides from stopping Nimrod and his Masons from travelling into space, the extraterrestrials gave mankind 72 different languages, so we could not communicate with each other. These 72 languages are replicated by the 72 bricks placed upon the American $1 bill. However, the Masons were smarter than the extraterrestrials gave them credit for. They retained the knowledge of symbols and became the custodians of the secrets behind each symbol. The Freemasons' 5-pointed star, with its angle of 72 degrees between each point, reminded them of their task ahead. The Freemasons would put the knowledge of symbols right in front of the public's eyes, such as in this Masonic church. Here a sequence of mosaic windows tells the story of how the 3 wise magi interpreted the signs in the heavens and journeyed to Jerusalem and Nazareth to welcome into the world Jesus. But the real story is in the hands of one of the magi who is holding a globe. Upon this globe is the symbols associated with the planets and also the zodiac signs. The Masons who attended this church would be well versed in the star constellations, as they are displayed upon the Royal Arch tracing board. And then came the great cover-up. During the late 1600s in England, religion played a major part in determining who you could work for. For instance, you could not take a public office unless you took communion in an Anglican church. There was an act called the Test Act. When this act was enforced, it excluded many different types of religions, which excluded Catholics from public office. At the time, England did not want to send any of its taxes to Rome. So in order to keep their taxes to pay for their own army, they chose to be ruled by a Protestant king or queen. It was the time of Christopher Wren, the Freemason, and his scientist friends. Christopher Wren, the architect, was given the task of rebuilding London after the Great Fire of 1666. He chose to rebuild London as a model of the New Jerusalem. And as the builder of the temple in Jerusalem was King Solomon, the new Grand Lodge of England in 1717 decided to remodel Freemasonry around the building of King Solomon's temple instead of the rebuilding of the Tower of Babylon. Please don't take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. Take the words of Christopher Wren's famous Masonic school, the Royal Society, and use their motto, take nobody's word for it. So what changed in 1717? Nothing. Only Freemasonry became more secretive. Their task of returning to the stars started to begin in earnest, and they created new schools, which started to allow everyone to become educated, speeding up the process of getting people with great minds closer to their organisation and their ultimate goal. The Freemasons have been preparing mankind for our return to the stars for some time. First, they needed to create their own country, which they did, America. Then they needed to open its doors to like-minded people who were looking for the challenge to change the world. Then they needed to create a money system which gave them total control of the world. This they did with their paper currency, the dollar, where everybody would sell their time, skills, and materials in exchange for American dollars, myself included. The Freemasons were now in a position to rebuild a tower that once again reached to heaven. The Masons knew that the Tower of Babylon was built on the Earth's energy grid line. They were aware that it was 33 degrees north of the equator at Babylon, and this is the reason there are 33 degrees in Freemasonry. With this knowledge of the Earth's energy grid under their belt, the Freemasons decided to build Cape Canaveral on 3 interjoining energy lines to maximize the Earth's power. I learnt this from Bruce Cathy and Rod Morpin's website entitled Map the World Grid with Gridpoint Atlas. With this knowledge of the cosmos and their own space station, all the Americans needed was their own arsenal of weapons. They then deployed the Space Wars program and used the technology to enhance their own array of fighting machines. Plus, they have always known what the extraterrestrials have wanted from us, the Earth's minerals. I'm not sure what building materials there are on the moon or in space. So the Earth must seem like a gigantic DIY store, full of everything anybody needs. Only we, the humans, are the workers who fill the shelves. I believe that for eons in time we have been communicating with these extraterrestrials. I say that because during 2 of the higher degrees in Masonry, I explained to the new candidate the importance of the Ark of the Covenant. I explained to him that it is an oracle, a machine that can interpret any language and reply with the correct answer. Up until 70 years ago, I would have looked foolish making this statement. Now, with the aid of a computer, I can ask it any question in any language, and it will instantly give me the correct answer. Now it appears as if anything is possible. This has all come about because the Freemasons have cracked 2 secret codes. The first one is electricity, and the second is binary code, i.e. computer code. I explain how they did this in my documentaries entitled The Secret Code of the Freemasons of Sydney, episodes 3 and 4. They can be found on my website ancientsymbolist.com. Today's Freemasonry, created in 1717 by the Grand Lodge of England, is all about the temple built by King Solomon in Jerusalem. King Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem for 3 special reasons. The first was to house the Ark of the Covenant. The second was to highlight the golden ratio, the law that governs the universe. And the third was for the Israelites to journey to Jerusalem to see his magnificent temple and to pay their taxes, so that King Solomon could pay his army to look after the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was the Israelites' telephone to the extraterrestrials. So how important is the Ark to the Freemasons? They have placed the Ark of the Covenant at the top of their emblem. It is guarded by 2 angels. The reason it is there is because they took a crusade back to Jerusalem to recover the Ark. However, later, when they were banished from Europe for becoming too powerful, they then took the Ark to America, where it is today. If we wished to locate it, we could ask some remote viewers the answer to this question. We have been communicating with these extraterrestrials via the Ark of the Covenant for centuries. How do I know this? William Tompkins dropped the hint of this when he remarked that the aliens, who looked like reptilians, gave Neil Armstrong the finger.
Neil Armstrong said, "Good God, sir, they are enormous," referring to these massive extraterrestrial
Craft.
Okay? They weren't crafts, they were ships. They were not crafts, they were ships. And so for them to be parked around the edge of the crater, above the surface, floating, okay, and then many of the reptilians standing with their legs apart, standing
all right.
on the ground.
They're on the surface. The reptilians are on the surface of the moon. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, they're standing underneath the ships.
And you saw this.
Yeah, and
were they scaly? Did they have suits on? Or they?
Then the word came back, they're giving us the finger.
Oh my God.
So they were pretty far away for you to tell what they really looked like, weren't they?
Yeah, it's a long ways. It's hard to do it. But whether that was actually happening, the finger thing or not, but that's what the statement they.
The finger is a very secretive sign to the Freemasons. King Solomon, when he built the temple in Jerusalem, used special builders from a town in Phoenicia. These special builders he swore to secrecy. Every builder was given a secret sign, one that he could only use in front of other masons. This sign was attributed to the knowledge of the building that housed the Ark and was communicated to the people on the other end of the receiver of the Ark. What was this sign? It is 2 fingers placed alongside each other like this. The two fingers represent the two pillars of Freemasonry. Here is a mosaic window in a Freemason's church showing King Solomon giving the two-fingered salute to Jesus. Now, nearly every image of Jesus shows him giving this two-fingered salute. The Freemasons who have gone through the higher degrees would know the relevance of this sign and how important it was. When William Tompkins begins to laugh about the reptilians giving Neil Armstrong the finger, I wonder if the Freemasons back at NASA were also giggling to themselves. Now to the reptilians. William Tompkins says that the reptilians stood upright underneath their enormous spacecraft and acknowledged Neil Armstrong with the sign of the finger. As Neil Armstrong was a Freemason, he would have been able to interpret this mosaic window in St. Mary's Cathedral, Sydney. The window shows the builder of the cathedral, Lachlan Macquarie, laying the foundation stone with the mason's trowel. He is being watched by two masons with their aprons on. Upon Lachlan Macquarie's hat is the clamshell, the symbol of a mason, and also the symbol for my film company. Above the Freemason Lachlan Macquarie is the serpent entwined around the symbol for secrets and the moon. That symbol is the horns. Standing on the horns is Eve, the Queen of Heaven. Around her head are the 12 signs of the zodiac, which is a road map to the stars. 8 young angels herald in the news, 8 being the number for the planet Venus to travel around the sun and produce a 5-pointed star. The serpent's tail is shaped in the form of a triangle or pyramid. This is the symbol for electricity. So it would appear from this Masonic window as if the Freemasons are acknowledging that the serpent is a good sign. We may wonder if the serpent that said these words to Eve in the Garden of Eden is a friend or foe. Eve, would you like to have the blindfold removed and to have your eyes opened? Would you like to be as wise as the gods, to know the difference between good and evil? Then go and take the apple from the tree of knowledge and cut it horizontally through the center. There you will find inside the apple is the 5-pointed star, the symbol for Venus and King Solomon. 20 years ago, I cut an apple horizontally through the center. Here is the video of me cutting that apple.
So what secret does the apple hold? If we cut an apple horizontally through its center, we find it has a perfect 5-pointed star inside.
After Eve took the apple from the tree of knowledge, she was told to go and teach Adam about the universe. My take on all of this, up until this point in the Bible, it does not tell if man and woman knew how to procreate naturally. Maybe we were only being cloned to work in the Garden of Eden. Suddenly Adam and Eve knew that they were naked and had probably done the deed. A God was so displeased he banished Adam and Eve from the garden and placed a flaming sword or laser beam to stop them getting back in. And at the same time, the serpent was also chastised. The big question that should be asked: was the serpent on mankind's side or not? Well, it seems that every culture in the world seems to revere the wisdom that the serpent gave to mankind. Here is an annual event that heralds in the Chinese New Year. The serpent is placed in front of your eyes in most churches. Usually they show Moses holding aloft the rod with the serpent upon it, and then Moses tells the people, "All who look upon the serpent shall live." The serpent is shown as a good sign everywhere in some churches, such as this one in a Freemasons church in England, where the shepherd's crook is shaped like a serpent. Have we really been visited by an alien group of visitors? Or is there more than one group of extraterrestrials who frequently visit Earth? From what I have gathered, the consensus out there is that there are 5 different types of alien visitors that our governments are aware of at this point. How do we know this? Well, here is the President of America, Ronald Reagan, telling the United Nations in 1987 that we have aliens here on Earth.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
And here is one of Ronald Reagan's employees, Sergeant Clifford Stone, in 2001 at the National Press Club of America, explaining that the American government knows they have 3 grey aliens and 54 humanoid extraterrestrials.
Of course, we are recommending that as well. Yes, sir.
So I think my question is actually to Clifford Stone. You said that you had seen aliens on a craft that had crashed. I wonder if you could describe what they look like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you have various types of what we normally call grays. We didn't call them grays in the military, but you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid. Now this created a situation where the scientific community was trying to figure out why that would be the case, because you would expect that if life evolved on other planets, that they would take on some type of other being, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid are bipedal such as we are. But apparently, we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance, and that creates a question that yet has to be answered by science.
Sergeant Clifford Stone makes the statement that the scientists seem a little perplexed by the humanoids who steer these UFOs. In reality, the scientists know the truth, because the Bible tells us that the sons of God took the daughters of mankind and had children with them. These children became giants in the land. What William Tompkins has done with his interview with Search for Truth Reality is to confirm what many people have suspected for years, that extraterrestrials have been coming to Earth and communicating with mankind and our governments. What he has also confirmed is that the Freemasons are the organisation who have been the most proactive in getting mankind back into space, which confirms the whole reason why Freemasonry was set up in the first place. For the Freemasons out there who think I have disclosed too much, think back to your first night in the lodge room, when you chose to search for the truth, and then listen to Dr. Robert Wood in the interview when he says that the truth will set you free.
Bob.
I've got a limited perspective at this point. I think there's two things that drive my thinking. One is the incredible sophistication that organizations, including governments, have had in keeping secrets. That's thought number one, and I believe that can be a convincing story, but it's a challenge because most people believe Washington can't keep secrets, and it's very difficult to get over that little hump. The second thing is I would say I'm not looking toward the aliens to solve our problems. I'm thinking that full disclosure will probably let the best results flop out. So I would say I'd go for full disclosure about everything, including disclosing things that would put a lot of people in jail because I think they deserve to be in jail. So those are my two main thoughts. And I think Bill's story really supports both of those arguments. Bill is himself trying to get the truth out, and I think the truth can set you free. Nothing wrong with that.
Indeed. Well, someday we'll have that, shall we?
Yeah.
For those non-Masons who think badly about Freemasonry, consider how you obtained the right to an education. Imagine being in a room listening to someone tell you stories in a language that you don't understand, such as in Latin. And lastly, where would we be without all of the technical discoveries that have come about in the last 70 years because of our need to go back into space? For those people thinking of joining the Freemasons, don't ask them on your first night about aliens. Instead, say you are inquisitive and are searching for the light. They will then help you find this light, for light is knowledge, and the light is the truth. I hope you have got something out of this video, maybe something that stirs your imagination to search for more truths about what's real and what's not, and to check out the next video about William Tompkins and Search for Truth Reality Part 3, where William explains we have found the Tree of Life, and that the American government have been given the ingredients of this Tree of Life to their servicemen and women for years. To keep my website, theancientsymbolist.com, freemason.com going, please subscribe and press the like button.